All right. Is there anybody there?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, good. All right.
Uh,
Good.
don't forget to record.
I already did. Yeah,
Oh,
it's been on for 2 minutes. I'm just waiting for
okay.
a sign
Oh,
of life. So,
sorry, I have to
and
remind.
I just let the dog out. So at a certain point, I'm going to have to let her back in. So let's see if there are any more questions. And otherwise, we can go to a solar chart and just have a look at a chart that is. Let me just find one here. Just look at a chart from the perspective of an untimed chart, meaning that we would have to then use the sun as the first house. I thought I had it here. I was going to use Elton John because that's a really good. His time is not sure. All right, I'm going to have to find it online and come back and make it. In the meantime, are there any other questions people might have?
Um, I don't know if you can hear me very well.
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay. I just had I know I don't want to linger too much on the stuff that we did in the first hour and a half just now, but it
It's
was
okay if we
about
do. If it's good, if it's a question that's still alive, you definitely jump
okay.
in. Okay.
Well, it was about just a very quick sort of just to go back when you mentioned the Mars retrograding, and you said that even if it's in Aries and if it's retrograding, it's still very slow. So how would it work if it's a Mars in poor dignity and retrograding?
So
Um,
I'm going to ask a question back at you. Tell, tell me. This is the
uh,
thing. The thing is, you do already know these things. You just have to
yeah.
go one assumption at a time. There's no magical one size fits all formula. You say, oh, this piece means that piece means this piece means that. So then you go from A to Z and you tell
Okay.
me, yes?
Okay. Um, oh,
So
so
tell
do I
me.
tell you? Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
I'm like,
Susan.
yeah, I'm on, yeah.
Um, I suppose it's very, very slow. Um,
What does
I
that
mean,
mean?
I'm
What does that
speaking
mean to
from
the
experience.
person? What does that mean to
Um,
the individual?
I guess, um, yeah, very, I don't know, doubtful person maybe, or a very unsure. Um, or unable to, I don't know. I suppose, yeah, it depends on the house and on the other things.
Yeah, you see, it's really
Um,
hard. You can't,
yeah,
this is like the people who ask questions in the comments in the YouTube videos. Like, I have Venus at this degree. What does that mean for me? It's like, I don't know. I have no idea. It's like,
yeah,
it has to be seen in context always. It's kind of like if you see, on social media, you post one thing about yourself, and then imagine that everybody assumes that that's who you are, that one post, that one little flash of a moment of your life in a mood that you were in a place that you were in, and that doesn't tell who you are. It's not enough. There's no context. Why am I there? Why did I get to that emotion? All those different things have to be part of the bigger context of who you are. So we in astrology will always be that way. We always have to find this way of understanding the bigger context before we can answer those detailed questions. The details are in the bigger context.
mhm,
So you have to reverse, for all of you, when I say you, it's a collective you, reverse your way of thinking about the question. Don't hone in on the aspect, but go to the bigger question. How does this aspect fit into the bigger chart? How does all of the chart affect the aspect, right?
yeah.
So
Thank you.
yeah, and notice that the same question gets asked a bunch of different ways. It's always the same answer. Notice that's always going to be it's your go-to. And the mind wants to have a shortcut or oversimplify or complicate things, depending. And it's always going to require the same strategic kind of A to B to C to D, etc. All right? And we'll get to
Right.
your untimed chart in a minute. So I just saw a hand go up with Sama. Did it go down again? There you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if I wanted to ask the question or not. I'm being my good old Libran.
Good Libra, Libra North Node.
Yeah, Libra, you get it here. It goes back a little bit to chart readings and a bit what Kristen was asking, but from an astrologer towards a client. In thinking about like potential and free will and um yeah, because I always try to offer something to people to say there is potential there, because otherwise, it. I can see.
Here's the question for you. Why?
Sorry,
Why?
why what?
What is it about you that you need to offer something in your client to talk about a potential that is not in the natal chart?
No, it is in the natal chart. I'm
Oh, well,
not.
then there's no problem with that. There's no
Okay.
dilemma.
So that is like in understanding that people can make choices in their chart, because you were also
To a
saying.
limited degree. No, but I was saying with reference to things that are not indicated by the chart. Like people,
Yes.
there are charts where people have difficulty in relationships in terms of like long-term relationships or having children or being wealthy.
Mm,
And it can cause a lot more stress for the individual to think, I should have this, I should be doing this, this is who I should be, rather than just saying to them, well, actually, this life is about this instead. This life is more in this direction, or these are the ways that you're really strong and wanting to engage. And often, like 99% of the time, they'll be like, yeah, I've always felt that way.
mm,
But societal pressure or parental pressure or their own just feelings of inadequacy or guilt make them think I should have those things. Like look at advertising, for example. We're all supposed to be rich and beautiful and happy in our marriage and everything. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
that's inculcating a kind of an attitude to oneself. And then when you can say to them, well, actually, money is not really the thing for you this lifetime. It's not where you put your focus, and it's not that people can't aspire to having money. But often, when that's the case, then the money will always leave. The money will always go away in one way or another. Like I can speak from experience. Jupiter in 12th house, and also in its detriment, there's no way I can hold on to money. It's just it's not that it's not available to me. I earn enough and more than enough to make my life, but I can't hold the money. And it's not that I'm trying to get rid of it. It's just in all kinds of different ways, whether it be that I want to give it away, like consciously or even unconsciously, that it goes away because I'm not managing my money. All these things are there, and it's just part of what it is, because my life is not about accumulating wealth. It's not about accumulating belongings and property and things like that. And once you just make peace with that, you think, okay, well then the effort is no longer, it's not a concern. It's not a stress.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
stress
My
while you think
question
it
is,
should be
yeah.
different.
Indeed. Yeah. Because I mean, with astrology, I've also been able to, yeah, learn to say that to myself. But I was wondering also, like, how much do you offer people those kind of, yeah, that kind of understanding that there is indeed a life to be lived now, and also that they can choose even if they are in very difficult, or they have very difficult tendencies or very difficult experiences that have happened to them, especially, when it comes to the mother and the struggles, with like Pluto kind of alignments that are always so dark and heavy, and to say to people it's a perspective and you can choose to let go or see it differently. And I
Yeah,
was.
but I think also I hear you very, very much. I hear where you're going with that. But I think we also need to be honest with people so that we also, we're not therapists, so we can speak to people in a slightly different way. And people are often coming to us for a little guidance. I never give advice, what I would call advice. I never say to somebody, you should do this, really. I'll just say, this is really the way that the energy is going. This is really strong right now. This is supporting. That becomes a challenge for you. That starts to make you feel stressful, or that's something that, and with the, let's say, Pluto aspects and challenges, you can say to somebody that is what's coming up, and help them see how they can work through it, but not necessarily with a Pollyanna idea like it's going to be fine, don't worry, it's all for your greater good. That's one of the reasons I left the evolutionary astrology thing, which was all about it's all for your greater evolution. And you know, whatever happened, it's like, oh, this had to happen, it's your evolution. It's like at a certain point, you just need to hear that's really hard. And on a human level, I don't care if I'm supposed to evolve through this is really hard. And I want to try and understand how it got to this. And then this is why I also find that going back through the chart towards the ancestors and saying, well, this has been a pattern. And when you become aware of the pattern, you bring it to your conscious awareness. Now you can do something about that. Now you say, oh, this is a part of the pattern, this alcoholism or this depression or whatever. It's something I'm carrying that is not only mine. And then you empower the person to see, well, now you've seen that. And now you're in a place of choice where before you see it, you don't have that choice.
Great, thank you.
Right? All right, hang on just a moment, please, everyone. I have to let the dog in. Oopa. Okay, I'll take that off. All right, off you go. Okay, you go like that. You know? All right, sorry about that. So, yeah, the counseling aspect of astrology is a whole separate thing, and you know, really worthy of exploring. And as I think I've said before, it's really helpful if you do courses in counseling and really help grow your skills in listening and counseling. It's very, very important if you want to work with people. And then the other thing I would say is that you want to look at the moon. Well, first of all, the ascendant ruler, the moon, and then to a slightly lesser extent, the sun, and then all the relational planets, Venus and Mercury. How will this person want to hear this information? How will this person listen or not? Like often when Mercury's too close to the sun, they're not good listeners. They talk, but don't listen. And so you have to frame things in a slightly different way because they may not really get your message. Or you get people speaking over you or anticipating what you're trying to say. That's a very Mercury sun thing. And so that's, you know, again, something you cultivate by working with people, like actual friends or family or somebody like that, where you can start to see, well, for that person, I could say that I could really go that far. And for that person, I won't go there. I'm just going to leave it at that. And we'll just give this much information and we leave it at that. So in my case, that people are most often coming to me because they're already aware that I have a way of looking at life and a frame of reference, which is about personal transformation. It's literally on my website. And so people know that that's, or at least if they're not, they're mostly conscious that that's the way they work. And then they come with that expectation. I want to learn something about myself and be able to overcome this or grow. So then I can really go a little deeper and I can say to them, you know, this is really what's necessary. Otherwise, you're going to be stressed and anxious and not be able to live fully because whatever, you know, I'm giving just a silly example, but it's to measure your client as much as the chart is important. Like, how are they psychologically? Did they just come and tell you that their husband left them? So maybe that's not the best time to tell them about how Pluto is such a great gift to your personal transformation. It's just like, no, we really just need to look at when this might start to feel better for that person. It really depends, you know. Yeah, so that's seen in the chart. Who am I talking to is also something to notice in the chart. Who am I talking to? We'll look at the personal planets, starting with the moon and the relational planets.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Okay, thanks. And David, I think you're next.
Yeah, it's been really helpful, especially the connection with the family and the ancestry, because I've always believed that, you know, in one way, we're here to heal our ancestors.
Yes.
Because there's a thread that runs through. So I think it's probably helps to just, you know, get back out and see a bigger picture. Sometimes when people are lost in the quagmire of their little world, our little worlds, I should say.
Yeah, yeah.
To just say, yeah, here's your ancestors, here's your parents, here's you.
Yeah.
You're here to heal it all.
Exactly. And that's literally how I read a chart. I start that way because then I help a person see that regardless of what comes next, you're part of a bigger story. You're like chapter 3 of an ongoing story. And there's stuff going on before you and there's stuff that you're going to create going forward. And that's been the single, for me, the single most influential aspect of dealing with clients is to be able to put themselves in a bigger context. And to see that their suffering is what they might interpret as suffering is a shared suffering.
Exactly.
It's coming through something that their family has just said, you know, we need help with this. We haven't been able to deal with this. So
And they're with you there as you
yeah,
do it.
exactly. Yeah.
But we are our ancestors.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so that's I'm really glad that that speaks to you, because it's, for me, that's really the whole reason. That's why I'm doing this course as well, to make my way of reading a chart more clear to people. I think it's really, it saves a lot of people a lot of stress and grief, I hope. All right, thanks, David. And Noreen?
I don't have so much a question, but a comment. It would be like, as we go through all of this, I learn how much I don't know and how much room there is to grow. And I keep thinking it would be so nice if they had like if there was a way to incorporate like observation or this student teaching aspect into a program. You know, like if you go to school to become a teacher, you have to do that period where you're doing observation, and then you're aligned with like a teacher who's been doing it for years, and then they help you grow. It would be so nice. And I know they do that in most professions, like they allow you that
So
time.
who's the they?
Well, maybe it's
Is
just
that a
like,
request to me that is being framed as a they, as sort of theoretical?
no, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it might just be like I don't know if I'm just have a narrow point of view, but in a lot of like American programs, when you go to school to go into a profession,
Yeah, I'm
they'll
fully
have
aware. That's why we're doing all these chart readings, and that's why I'm reviewing homework. But if people don't submit homework, I can't give feedback. So what can I do? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So
all I'm saying is it would be nice to like observe like real sessions, almost like because as I hear you speak, like the things that you think of and say, they don't even come to my mind. But when I hear you say them, it just makes me realize like how much room there is to grow. And it's just a statement. It would be wonderful to if there was like an observation program to go, and you can go and observe and then ask. I know it doesn't really work that way. Yeah.
very delicate, because you're dealing with an individual's life story, you know, so it's very delicate. It requires somebody to agree to having themselves exposed, let's say, to total strangers, which is challenging. And especially when I go through a chart, sometimes we touch on really deep things that are not easy, and you don't know that you're going to get there until you get close to it. You see, that's the thing. Somebody might think, oh, it'll be fine. Yeah, no problem. I can have these 10 students watch this chart reading, and then you start to touch on, oh, was there a possibility of sexual abuse in the family? Is there incest? You know, now do you want 10 people staring at you? I'm not so sure. You see, so it's really, it's a difficult thing. I think the practice is what's required. It's constant practice, 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 reading, seeing how this appears again and again. And yep, now I'm sure that that aspect means that. This is what I see, that's why that means that. And the steady steps from the rulerships and all the way through the rest of the chart help to build your confidence in terms of reading the chart and just getting to that clarity. But it just has to be done. There's no magic bullet. It just has to be practice, practice, practice. So I get the understanding. I still don't know who they are, but anyway, the idea for me is that this is a very personal thing. That's why I do figures who have either passed away, where I'm not trying to speak anything into their existence, and also famous people who are out there anyway, who put themselves out there, or for good or bad reasons, are somehow public. And then you can say, well, this is something you can see on the nightly news. This has happened. You see, this person has this quality, and that's what we're seeing in live, in living color, right? It's a delicate thing to go into a person's life. It requires a lot of compassion for most people. It's some stories of real difficulty. So, yeah.
Thank you. So just to transition, I believe there's a question in the chat as well about will you be going back to derived houses?
That's what we're going to do now. That was the solar house, the solar chart. Yeah. Is there any more question before we do that then? We'll look at Elton John. Okay, let's have a look then. Thanks, Noreen, for that. Oh, we've lost Elton. Hang on. There it is. Boom, ba-dum. There we go. All right. So there's Elton. There's a lot of conflict around his time, and that's why this chart is not it's not known. And so we've given it a solar chart. This is simply an Aries rising chart. This is just no time. It's Aries rising because the sun is Aries. So we put the sun at the actual ascendant. So this is the 3 degrees and so on. We can ignore or use as you decide. You know, that's for example here it just helps us see this really strong trine to Saturn. So let's go, because you guys can read the chart. So let's do it all together. So give me, from the solar perspective, some indications of his experience and how we see him, how we see Elton, even though we don't know that this is his ascendant. And it isn't his ascendant, even by the conflicted times, it's not an Aries ascendant. So that's why it's also a good chart to take, because it doesn't closely resemble the ascendant. Anybody want to jump in? Let's start with a topic. How does he do with relationships? How does he do in connection with people? What's his relational type quality?
He seems to be easygoing and he likes to work with others. Like there's a collaborative nature.
What makes you say that?
Is that the 7th house that we're looking at?
For relationships, you can take anything that speaks to you about relationships. So I'm just going to remove this so we don't see those indicators. Sorry. Okay, because we don't know about those things, just to take them away. All
I
right.
thought we were doing derived houses and we were looking at like the house and how
We
he
are. This is derived houses, so you weren't
So
wrong.
I'm looking at this-
I'm testing you. I'm questioning you. So
Please
why
don't
are you
test me.
saying? So come back. So 7 houses from the sun,
The 7th house is ruled by Libra.
right? No,
Libra,
Yeah.
sorry,
ruled by.
Venus.
Thank you. Yeah. No, you said ruled by Venus, by Libra.
Sorry. Yes, we always do that.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So ruled by Venus. So, and there he is
So I'm
with
gonna have
what?
to
With
jump
what?
to Venus. Okay, I get it. So he
Yeah.
he
So
likes
it's by Venus.
people, but would rather not be around them. Maybe that would be a better way to describe it. So so I'm looking
Is
at
that true though? Is that I don't know. Where do you get that feeling?
Aquarius. I mean, so it's Okay, sorry, I'm not going to joke around anymore. So I'm looking at the 7th house that is ruled by Venus,
Yeah.
that is ruled by Saturn.
Right.
That takes me back to the sun, actually.
Right. And what about that Saturn? What's the story of that Saturn that's ruling a 7th house Venus rulership of Libra?
That Saturn is not very happy. It's not in good dignity. I mean, it's not. And it's not, is that a conjunction with Pluto? I guess not, but let's not go there maybe. Just
It's a broad conjunction with Pluto, but let's leave that for a moment. We're just going to do this as a solar house, solar chart.
It's doing
so
things differently because it's retrograde.
Yes, different. And then let's say if you use that, I fully appreciate that you use that expression, but the corollary to that needs to be, what would I say to a client? If you said to your client, your Saturn is different, your Saturn acts differently, they'd be like, what?
So
Tell me,
it's sort of
what does that
making
have?
its own rules, maybe, where it's setting up its own kind of
So
I
who's
don't know,
ruling Saturn?
the sun in
Yeah.
Aries,
Yeah,
and that's ruled by Mars in Pisces.
right. And what is that house that Saturn is in? So we can also do sign by house, but this is I've just chosen a chart that puts the sun on the ascendant, so that throws off the houses. So we can ignore the house cusps and just look at the sign by sign. Otherwise, I could adjust, for example, for a rising, like 6 a.m. or whatever it would be, for the sun to rise and suppose that the sun is in the ascendant. This is just putting the sun on the ascendant. That's why everything's a little goofy here, that we don't have the alignment with the houses. So just to say, ignore the house cusps, because that's coming only because I
Okay.
put it on the thing. You can also use it with the house cusp, but let's look at these as separate signs just to make it easier. So let's look at where Saturn is, and Pluto would be there, and try and understand that. So here we go, house 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, 5, because we've got, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change it, because that way it makes it more clear, because if you're reading a solar chart, there's 2 ways of doing that. That you do a whole sign house that you put at the rising time of the sun. I'm going to put 6:30 just to see roughly that'll be about when the sun rises. Oh, hang on, I didn't change the type of house. I want a whole sign, not sun on the first. So again, that depends on which house system you choose, right? So that you also have in terms of your calculations for your chart. So no, I need to change the time. You see, this is why it's easier to do the sun on the rising, but it's just confusing for. Okay, what time does the sunrise happen in the UK on the 25th? Today, on a day like today, when does the sun rise? Would it be 7 a.m.? Sunrise 7 a.m., do you
A little
think?
bit before,
All
about
right, let's see if this helps. Yep, there we go. Okay, let's go with 7 a.m. And we're just arbitrarily putting the sun there, and it ends up at so the sun is still in the first house just by a hair, but actually now we can see clearly the signs and houses separately, the whole sign house system. All right, let's go back. So we have Saturn that is now in the house of what?
Self-expression, creativity.
Exactly. So what happens when Saturn is retrograde in that sign of the sun and not in strong dignity because it's in its fall, detriment. And on top of that, it's with Pluto in the fifth house of self, and it's trining the sun. We'll get to the square to the moon in a minute.
So are we still talking about how he does relationships, or just?
Yeah, we're trying to get, because Saturn is ruling this Venus. So that's why Saturn becomes important. Now we have to understand Saturn to understand Venus,
Okay,
to
so we're
understand
going to focus
relationship.
on, okay,
Yeah,
we're going to focus
so we're
on.
still, the question here is relationship, but we're trying to understand how does this is fifth house of romance, it's self-expression, how he shows up. We're trying to understand all of that in the context of how does he get to a relationship.
Yeah.
there's something a little bit cold about him. There's restrained.
Restrained by what or who?
The Saturn in the
Yeah, but who does that represent? All what those things represent somebody.
Father.
Would it be a strict father? Father, right? So he has a difficult dynamic with his father. In fact, also we see with the mother.
Mm.
But for now, we're just going to focus on the father because Venus also rules that moon, and we'll get to that in a minute. So here's a person, and this is the natal chart, remember? So it's a natal chart. It doesn't mean that's how he ends up in life. It's how he starts life. It's how he's got to deal with. This is a good sign this is an excellent way of seeing how planets in detriment can actually be something they can use, right? This is also determination. I'm not giving up. I will not give up. It's a trine,
because
not
it's
a
also
square.
a trine. So that's what I was thinking, like, on the one hand, to read it about his relationship with his father, it seems a bit competitive and not very, like, I don't see that this person would easily understand how to be easygoing in a relationship. But at the same time, the Saturn trining the sun is actually a good aspect on a personal level that gives him, an ability to apply himself, structure, and be quite serious in trying to achieve the things that he's after.
Right. And one of the things that an Aries sun does, as well as any sun in a trine to Saturn, regardless of the condition of Saturn, is that it's very good at self-sufficiency.
Mm.
And we want to understand, why is it self-sufficient? Like, is that because the person was abandoned, or is that because they were ignored, or was that because they were demeaned, etc.? There's different things in the chart that will help us see what that is. But anyway, just to say that that is showing that there is some kind of, I need to be me, and I know that that's my only way forward. I need to do this on my own, because I don't feel like I am lovable or can express my love. That's Saturn in the 5th. That's in a Leo that says it's difficult to be me. So notice how he started showing up on stage, where we have Venus in the 11th house. He was wearing all kinds of costumes. He never just went as himself. He doesn't even have his own name. That's not his name. It's a stage name. So for him to show up as himself takes a lot of effort. It's really hard personally. It's personal. That's a Saturn in a trine to the sun and ruled by that sun. It's really hard. And that Eris tells us another detail. You don't have to use these planets, but I use Eris and Chiron always in readings because they tell me so much about how the person has experience of themselves and their early life experience. And that Eris is about not being seen or not being respected, not being given the honored, not being valued in some way. It's about recognizing hypocrisy, either, being the sort of thorn in the side of the family that points to hypocrisy, or living hypocritically is another way that can happen unconsciously. And he's very personally implicated in this. So it's not an easy way to grow up because he doesn't feel confident. So what does he have to do? He puts on really flamboyant outfits. So he's overcoming it, but it's not him doing it. He's this persona. As the Mercury, Mars in the 12th house, that Mercury is very creative in Pisces. Mars can be very, very creative and expressive, and the two together is technical prowess. Mercury is ruling the 3rd, and even if it wasn't ruling the 3rd, it's still technical prowess in general with Mars. It's technical skill, playing the piano, for example. It's ruling the 3rd house, where he has the North Node and where he has Uranus, which is about, that musical skill, talent, singing. He's got a beautiful singing voice. People appreciate him for his singing voice. He's got the exalted moon in Taurus in the 2nd house. That's his singing voice. This is all solar, by the way. So this is not his natal chart. It's just his solar chart. And then Venus is ruling that. Where is she?
Yeah,
She's on the stage.
on the
She's on the stage. So how does he relate to people? Well, mostly he pretends. We've got Neptune in the house of relationship, and he's ruled by Venus on the stage, which is ruled by this very shy and self-doubting and self-restricted and even parentally restricted sense of self. And so he overgives. We know that he's extremely generous. We see that also with the Mercury and Mars in Pisces. That's the house of loss. Mercury represents money as well, and it's ruling the 3rd house, where we have Uranus, where he's just like chucking the money all over the place. This exalted moon is another good example of why an exalted planet does not always bring the best results, because he's over generous with people. He would give money away to friends. He still, to this day, he finds people he wants to support, which is not a flaw. I'm just saying this is what he does. But what he does is he takes on people who he feels like he can help because he doesn't feel good enough himself. So he's taking on this role of, and I'm not judging that either, I'm just saying this is the way that it can come through, the way the astrology is showing us, that his own self-doubt makes him feel like he's beholden to other people. Sorry, I think I just nudged.
Susan, can I just add? He was trained classically. His father made him train classically, was really rigid with him, really controlling. That's why it was like rebellious for him to become a pop
Okay.
star.
That also explains that Saturn in the 5th house as well, because it's restrictive around your own creation, around your self-expression. You have to do it this way. But also that's Mercury and Mars. That's a kind of a signature for engineering, an engineer. and having to do things a particular way. He would know his notes forward and backwards. He knows how to write music, and he writes songs in a day, not even a day. Sometimes he's written on his lap in a taxi. And that's the Mercury Mars, creative expression, and the Mercury ruling the third house. So it's a very interesting dynamic. All of this picked up by just his sun. You see? So we don't know his ascendant. All of what we're getting here, we can see in him because we're looking at his sun. So this is a derived house. These are derived from the sun. And the challenge around his timing is such that it's not worth even trying to be sure, because these 5 different sources say different things. So Sonia, do you want to have a question there?
Yeah, like in terms of the retrograde Saturn, what would be a non-retrograde, a normal direct Saturn? What nuance would the I try to understand that the retrograde tells me in this chart that, you know, it's a point I have to look at, or does it mean like the normal structure, the normal meaning of Saturn is kind of reversed?
No, it never means reversed meaning. That's important. I don't know where that idea comes from. That's a kind of a new agey astrology idea that all of a sudden planets change their meaning and Venus becomes war or, you know, anger or what. No, they don't reverse their meanings at all. That's really important to understand. They don't behave the same way. So Saturn, rather than being overtly maybe shamed or feeling unable to do his thing, he feels it, but he gets on with it anyway. You see, so he's feeling it. It's internalizing. Often those retrogradations are more impactful to the individual and not so obvious to other people because they're internalizing, especially the closer you get to the personal planets. The outer planets, again, not such a big deal because they're retrograde so often that we don't really need to differentiate so much. It's still going to have an extra information for us that says it's going towards something or away from something. And even if we look at that Saturn, it's going away from the Pluto that itself is going away from something. So here we see the Saturn is telling us the story. It's trying to get away from this 5th house. What it really wants is cuddles and hope and support from the family. It's not getting it. You got to just do your thing. Get on with it. I like to see, if you look at the planets a little bit, especially those retrograde planets, as a little cartoon character rather than just a glyph. It's like what does the glyph mean, and give it a little cartoon image. And then you see, what is this planet actually doing? Like, make a story. What is this Saturn actually doing? It's running away. Like, my dad is way too controlling. I want to be myself. I want to have stability at home. I want to have a home life that brings me peace and quiet, and I don't feel comfortable here. You know, you can make it in that sense, you know. And so again, the Venus is not personal, or oh my God, the Neptune is not personal, but you can give it the same kind of flair. It's like, well, here I am in relationship, but I'm not really sure what kind of relationship I want. I've got a Venus that is a masculine Venus. It's a Venus, and that doesn't mean somebody is gay. It just means that that's one element of relational quality. We've got a Venus ruled by a masculine Saturn. What's going on with Saturn? Oh, so Saturn is actually not in really strong dignity. That's ruling that Venus. And that could also be the 5th house of sexuality. It's like, I don't know what this is all about for me. And it turns out, I think he only lost his virginity when he was well into his 20s or something like that. And he was still not clear that he was gay until much, much later. So again, that's about this shyness of who I am. I'm going to show up, but I don't know who I am quite. I'm not really sure. I'm just going to keep showing up, and I'm not going to like it, but I'm just going to keep showing up. And we see the Saturn with reference to the moon is also, again, that's another way of looking at this as a depletion of the moon, or as something that challenges that lovely moon. Otherwise, like, the mother would have been there, the family would have been there. I think his aunt, he had a strong aunt influence, for example. But there's something preventing the mother, or there's something about the mother and her situation that didn't allow for a really rich emotional connection. And even Saturn is moving away from the square to the moon, trying to accommodate that moon, not going into the square, but it's rather moving away from the square. So I can't remember. I did read his autobiography a few years ago, which was very good, but I can't remember exactly the dynamic with his mom. And And then the moon is opposite Chiron. So again, there's a story here with the spouse. Look at the Jupiter retrograde in Mars ruled Scorpio in the 8th house, where I already said to you, notice that that can cause trouble. And Jupiter on the nodal axis often can cause trouble for women with their spouses. So I can't remember if the father was not faithful, or I don't know what the story was there. But that also shows for him as well that he was promiscuous. There was that degree of promiscuity until he found his partner, who happens to be from Toronto. So that's my second little Canadian story for the day. And that person is extremely grounded. That individual is extremely grounded. I think he was like a lawyer or something. He's not anything to do with the entertainment business. He was nothing connected to that. And that normalcy is what he needs. That we see that he needs some kind of security. He needs emotional security. He needs financial security and stability that is going to make that moon feel content and to appease, let's say, the challenge of that Saturn trining the sun, which makes it feel like I got to do this all by myself. I have to do this all by myself. I am the only one I can rely on. So same thing about children. So if we take the 5th house as to represent children, he was very loving. He is a very loving person, but not able to always find expression. Didn't have at all for a long time good relationships, like until he was 50 or whatever he was when he finally met David. And that also meant that he could never have children. And he actually would have liked to have had children. He's got Leo on the 5th house with an exalted sun in the 1st. So he loves children. His children were other friends' children. Like he gave to a lot of children's charities, and he also was very close to Diana, Princess Diana, or late whatever, Princess Diana, and her 2 children were like his children. And so here we have this tension and conflict and delay and struggle around having children, and eventually they adopted. And they have now 2 sons. Did they adopt, or was it some kind of surrogate? I can't remember. Was it surrogacy? Does somebody know that?
I think it was a surrogacy thing.
Okay, yeah, that brings up another issue, astrologically speaking, not about him, but in general. Surrogacy is becoming a bigger thing because now our technology and our global network allows us to abuse women in Ukraine or Philippines or wherever and get babies by design. But also what we have to think of through the astrology is whose baby are we looking at? Because that baby, we know that natal chart is the chart that is already something that is being experienced before you even get here. And you don't start when you are handed over as a bundle of joy to the person who bought you. You have a biological mother and you have a biological father. Now this is different to in vitro fertilization because that's the 2 biological, the cellular biological creation of this baby that is the parent's baby. So their dynamic is still very strong there. But in terms of a designer baby, a baby using one or another of the father's sperm, and then this is happening in another woman's body, who is sometimes geographically very far away, culturally very far away, having her own experience, and however much you buy her organic food and do nice things for her while she's pregnant, her legacy is there. And so this child comes in and they are carrying that ancestral story of all of those people. And that's a very, very challenging thing. Another thing that is a bigger challenge in our modern world is timed cesareans. Having a baby by design again because the doctor goes off duty at 6 on a Friday. So you got to have your baby by 4. And that again is also playing with the energy of the impact of the circumstantial, let's say, impact of the life of this child. So it's a really interesting thing to ask your client also, especially generally speaking, people before the 70s or 80s, this is not even a question. But if you have people coming to you who are born, let's say, from the 90s onwards, it's really interesting if there's something unusual in the chart that just doesn't somehow line up, or that they are not relating to. You can ask them, were you know, did both of your biological parents live together, or was this an arranged situation? You know, were you a surrogate? Could be a very interesting thing to know.
What about cesarean?
Yeah, I just mentioned the cesarean. So that's the thing about the timing of the pregnancy. Sama, I just need you to mute. Hang on. There we go. The timing of like my first baby, she had the umbilical cord around her neck, and I wasn't able to have a vaginal birth. So I asked them at the very least to just let the waters break and let the birth process start, and then we'll go in. And then that was possible because I lived in Brussels, so the hospital was not far away, and there would be somebody available to help me with the baby, so, or to do the surgery. And so when she came, it was actually a day before the supposed due date, and the operation, I think the waters broke around 1, and she was born at 5:43 in the afternoon. So if I had started the process of labor, it's possible that I would have continued through the night, my first baby. You never know. But anyway, the point being that that timing was out of my control, but up to the point that I decided I'd let at least my baby decide it's time to leave the womb, then to a certain extent, that was the time that I got. And this is a chart where I have my daughter's moon is on my sun. Exactly. I didn't know this because I wasn't paying attention really astrologically at that time. I kind of was, sort of, but not really that closely. The moon was on my sun, and her sun is on my Mars. And Mars rules my 5th house of children. This was my first operation, and it was a cesarean to have a baby. So it's just a really interesting dynamic that it was not what I had, let's say, planned, but something was arranged in some way, shape, or form that it was very karmic. There's other ways that our charts line up. Her Jupiter is on my midheaven, for example, and so there's a lot of ways that the chart lines up for that moment. And that's pretty extraordinary. So it's not that in and of itself that cesarean is bad. What I would have a problem with is people planning the date. In terms of the astrology only, they can do what they like, but just to say, you know, your convenience is also determining something about how your child comes through the world. Because as we've seen, it really does somehow, for mysterious reasons, have an impact on who we are in this lifetime when we look at a natal chart.
Yeah, I have a friend who's had 2 kids by cesarean, and it's in France, and they're both born at 9:10 in the morning because the cesareans are done first thing in the morning.
Yeah, for example, that's very common. And in the United States, it's the same. They're not necessarily done at a particular time, but they're done to the convenience of the doctor, not the patient. And that's again, it's a very strong karmic influence. It's part of the karma for that child to have the kind of parent who's in a relationship to the doctor that allows that to happen. You see? So I already didn't want to have my baby in the hospital. I wanted to have a home birth. Then on top of that, I had to have a cesarean. So I said, at the very least, I want to negotiate that the baby has to be ready. And they were, because everything was otherwise healthy, they were fine with that. And because I could get to the hospital within sort of 10, 15 minutes. So yeah, it's a shame because we have that more and more. If you look at the statistics, it's like 1/3 of births in countries like the US, Brazil, maybe it's even more in Brazil, but these kind of countries, they're just way beyond the statistical need for a cesarean. It's just way, way, way too high. And from an astrological point of view, it's really worth paying attention to that and noticing. And again, that started really in the 90s. It wasn't really the thing before. Before it was really on on a need basis, there would be a cesarean, for example?
I think in the UK there's a lot statistically there's loads more births during the week than there are at the weekend because there are less doctors on duty. But it's not
Yeah.
just with cesareans, it's because I've forgotten what it's called, even though I had it done to me, where they make the baby come
Oh,
in.
right, where it's induced. The
That's it.
baby, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's
So
also in and of itself, it's a trauma to the baby.
Yeah.
It's a trauma to the mother and baby. So again, that's imprinted in the natal chart. So, yeah. All right, Bettina has a question. You can jump in, unmute yourself.
So it's just my son was suction clock.
Okay, yeah.
Because and he has his north node where I have my north node, but the north node doesn't move that much, right?
No,
So
this the north node is very karmic. It's not like the moon, for example, which changes really rapidly. The moon can be karmic depending on what else it's in connection with, especially if there's an exact conjunction with a personal planet. But the nodal axis it was gonna be that way either way. So that's not about the birthing process.
yeah, and I have just one more question. How do you handle a reading when they have a teacher or not giving birth natural when you have decided the time before?
I would do the reading either way from the chart, but it's good to know what was the circumstance around this person. So what we're looking at is who's the mother, for example. When I look at a chart and I see, oh, well, this person, like let's say Elton John's sons, they have a mother who's not actually within the fold of the family. She's another person that was chosen to have their baby. Some people do it with a friend or cousin or something like that try and bring it into the sort of social fold. But we still want to know what am I talking about when I'm talking about mother, you see? To understand that distinction. I just want to read the comment here from James, which is that when my wife had our twins, the second was born 15 minutes after the first because the doctor wanted to keep it moving. I see this is it's having an effect on us all psychologically. The way that our society is run, the way that our care is offered or that lack of, the way that we have chosen collectively to go down the path of medicalization of something so natural and stigmatization also of something so natural, and it affects us. You see how the natal chart is speaking to how the individual starts their life and how they move forward in life. And sometimes, like those circumstances, or the mother did not choose that. She ends up in a circumstance where she's having her babies, but because the doctor decides something, you're very, very vulnerable when you're in the middle of giving birth. You're in a totally different space. You're very vulnerable, and you're not in a position to say no, right? It would be very difficult to say, no, I need more time. One would need an advocate, like a midwife, for example, somebody to advocate. But again, things are happening in a way that everything comes down to what's pragmatic, what's efficient, etc. And that shows up in the chart. It just shows up there in the chart. And that's us collectively, right? So we're all shifting, we're all moving in this direction socially. So just something to keep in mind about your clients. Helen.
Hi, I have a more technical question about charts when you don't know their time. I always thought, or it seems like the general rule is to use 12 noon, which I guess might give some advantage of that, might give you a better idea where the moon is, degree-wise.
The moon is where it is, regardless.
Sign-wise, sign-wise, like if it's on the edge. But are you saying it's better to do the sun in the first house?
My preference is, because we're doing derived houses here, the noon chart is not a derived house system. It's putting the sun in the 10th, basically. And so what you're looking at is everything from the 10th. So I feel that the sun represents the acknowledgement of self, the awareness of self. It's the I am energy in the first house, and the consciousness of myself. And so it's, for me, on the horizon just makes it very straight. It's a derived house from the sun, one sign from the sun. Well, in the second house from the sun, we have the moon in this chart, for example. We do that from the 10th. Now put the sun on the 10th. Now one with 2 signs from the 10th house is the 11th house. So it's a very different qualitatively from the reference point of the sun, of the individual that we're looking at, you see? So I don't use that. I know that that's a technique, but I prefer a rising sign chart, a solar-based chart. And then you can put the moon on the first house as well and do a moon-based chart and look at their interior experience of life, and the same applies. You see, and the same would be, there we have the moon, let's say on the 1st, imagine, for Elton John. Well, where does the sun go? The sun goes to the 12th. And that speaks to exactly what we've described here, which is that I don't really feel comfortable showing myself. I want to, but I don't really feel comfortable doing it. So I pretend, I wear costumes, and I have hair plugs, and I wear big sunglasses and do all kinds of things that distract from who I really am.
Okay, thanks. That's very helpful.
Yeah, it's my recommendation anyway. I find it much more clear. Yeah, because you can also do the solar chart is basically a sunrise chart, and with the sun on the ascendant, you just imagine, this is me showing up now, and how do I feel about that? How do I feel about my life? All right, so we're getting close to the end, so I'm just going to take these questions. And Elsa, I think, yeah, Helen, we're done. We think we've finished up there, and so Elsa's next.
So if a solar chart is looking at things from the perspective of the sun, and you just said also the person's self-awareness and all of that, how would that, like, what would that mean for, like, when we were looking at all this Saturn, the whole Saturn thing going, and him like sort of hiding behind this persona? Is that something that he's doing because he's aware of the, like, does it basically mean that looking from the perspective of the sun, is there an awareness? Is this the stuff that he's aware of?
The sun, especially the sun in Aries, because he's got on top of that a sun in Aries. But anyway, the sun is me, it's myself. It's how I engage with the world, right? It's my way of seeing my purpose and why I'm alive, what gets me out of bed. It's the sun, it's my driving force. It's my awareness of my conscious self, I am, right? And that's why the sun is also exalted in Aries. It's I am, here I am. The sun is thriving in exaltation in Aries also because it rules the 5th house of self-expression. So I'm now just preparing these videos, which I'll post on YouTube. I don't have time to do it in this course, but this week at some point I'm going to start posting these videos about explaining why each of the signs has the different qualities that they do. And one of the things for the sun in Aries, or anyway Aries in general, is because the sun rules the 5th house. And then I'll go through all the rest of it in the video. But you see, the sun is you. It's who you are. It's me as I show up. It's the way I want to have a career. It's my sense of vocation, my way of contributing to the world. It's me when I come into a room. That's the sun. The 1st house ascendant is your appearance. It's what you look like. How do you interact in your life? What is the field of reference in your life with all the different placements of the signs? It gives you the quality of the feeling of your life. That's also why with Aries, imagine that this was the real ascendant, which it isn't, but if you imagine that this is an Aries ascendant, this is why Aries is so direct. There's no nuance with Aries. Everything is so direct because each of the houses is in their natural sign, right? So there's a direct correlation. And it makes it very straightforward. What you see is what you get with Aries. Very straightforward. You flip the chart, put Libra on that, and everything's a little wishy-washy. It's not at all clear. There's ambiguity around who I am. I don't know what to do about relationship, not so clear about my goals. You see, Capricorn is the 10th house for Aries. It's ruled by Saturn. It's ambitious, it's driven. It knows that's my duty. I'm going to fulfill my duty. That's Capricorn on the 10th house. So, you know, in a Libra rule chart, for example, it's the moon on the 10th house. I don't know. I don't know who I am. What should I do? I don't know. Somebody tell me who am I? See, this is, I'm characterizing, obviously, that's the archetype, but this is the quality driven, derived from the houses from the ascendant or the sun or the moon. And we can do the same with any other planet. You just keep going. Don't do it with the outer planets. It doesn't really work. With Venus, what is the love nature? What do I value? What do I cherish? How do I express my harmony, my beauty, my sense of fairness and all that stuff? And so we see, for example, Elton John is very, very much a social creature. He's very much about the society in general, social causes. He was one of the earliest people to do something about AIDS, he does charity concerts, he does all kinds of things for humanitarian reasons, you see. So his relating is also in that way. It's very indifferentiated. He loves everybody in that sense of, you're human here, let me help you. And that's also part of the Neptune across from the sun, which is like, I feel like I should help you. I feel sorry for you, or I feel like I need to be needed by helping you. So all of that can be applied. Somebody had a question and then that disappeared. Did the question get answered, or did you want to? I can't remember who that was. Was it Kristen? Kristen is on baby duty, I think, so I'm not sure.
No, I'm not. I'm okay.
No.
I actually had a question. If you ever use a co-ascendant?
No.
Okay.
No. So again, these are things that start to complicate things in ways that I don't see the importance of. I don't see the help in that. Because the information is already here, you see. That's why I don't use like 25 asteroids in the chart. It's interesting to know where all the different things are and see how they might line up. But then if you're relying on too many different things, you're no longer really in a clarity of the reading. And again, that's independent for each person. Just get really super clear on the basics and then see, what do you add? Add and take away, add and take away. And then sometimes you don't need to add anything and you think, yeah, I get this, I see the meaning. If you ideally you want to get to the point where you can read a chart without the outer planets, like we started out doing, just the basic 7 planets plus the nodes, and that's it. And then anything else will just help you with that understanding. Georgia.
Hello. Do you feel the same about bounds or terms, whatever you call them?
That can be very
also-
helpful. That can be
Okay.
very helpful. It gives you added information again. But then when you start to know the chart, or if you look at decans, I tend to work more with the decans, and then the question is, which system do you follow? Which one do you choose? And when you know the chart and how it works out, well, we know that, for example, the decans, I know the moon is in the first decan, the sun is in the first decan, Mercury is in the first, lots of first decan things here going on. That's also a very interesting thing. And then you start to see, second decan going on here, second decan, second decan. So things like that, but you don't have to. You can get lots of information without going into all that stuff. It always will be an extra layer of detail, just extra information. And I find that the rulerships speak much louder than the rest of it. The rulerships already give you so much information. And if you want to refine all of that, then you go into all those other techniques. I consider them to be, again, a step forward, an advanced way of looking at the chart. So focus on this thing. This is I still consider what we're doing here relatively basic. Like we're still just into an intermediate reading of a chart. And there's a long way to go. There's so many other ways of looking and reaching into that. But you want to get to be really confident, and there's still in the group still quite a lot of wobbliness around significations of things, and that is where you need to keep putting your attention and forget for the moment all the extras until you feel really confident with all these things. But then don't add too much on your plate, because it can actually make you more anxious when you're faced with a reading. You're like, oh my God, have I forgotten something? Have I overlooked something? It's like, no, get the information from the basic chart, and anything else is going to support that. And whatever you find useful, you work with it, and for the rest, ignore it. You'll do a fantastic reading without any, for example, asteroids, or not knowing any of the fixed stars, or any of the other various things that you can add in. It's trendy right now. That's the other thing. There's certain trends. Now, a big trend in the last 2 years is the vertex. Suddenly everybody's asking me about the vertex. It's like, no, for however many years, I've never even looked at the vertex. If you want to find out what everybody thinks that means it's my partner, my relationship, and so on. Well, wait, did you already look at the basic chart before you looked at the vertex? Now, don't please ask me about the vertex. We're not going there. But just to say that the information is here in the chart. It's there. You don't need to keep adding all of these things, sometimes very obscure things that are being dredged out of, books that are very old and perfectly valid things, but do you need them? So keep it simple. You'll find that the information is jumping out at you when it's simple. All right, David, are you finished, Georgia, with your questions? Was that answered?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And David?
This is just on the concepts. Like I don't know if this is true or not, but they talk about as planets are discovered, say as Pluto was discovered at the same time, as a nuclear bomb or whatever.
Yeah.
And those correlations and how things are. So I guess technically there may be some asteroid or something that's connected with, say, invertible fertilization, right? That technology.
Sure.
I mean, that's, I mean, obviously there's all, but
yeah,
I guess technically there's all these things are related in some way. It's just, do we need them?
Yeah, but exactly. Do you need them? But also, is it really true? That's the question.
Yeah, well, that's
a lot of people think of Juno as this really sort of fluffy, wonderful symbol of marriage, and it's all lovely. It's Juno. And David Cochrane, who's a really extraordinary astrologer, he does a lot of scientific research around astrology. He does a lot of research. He has a channel on YouTube, and he has a members thing. I'm not a member of his channel, but he's got a lot of information that's beyond what he puts on YouTube, and it's really technical stuff. So I don't really delve too deep into it, but he does research. Is this true? And he's come up with things like, well, actually, Juno is not that helpful. When I look at how he goes through thousands of charts, and he's like, no, there's no light and fluffy Juno. It's not happening this way. But what happens is the way people project onto something sticks. And that's where it gets dangerous to use too many of the moderns. They call them the moderns, either the outer planets or the things that are not tested, let's say. Things need to be tested over a decade or more, and to really understand their meaning. Like, I didn't start using Eris until about maybe 5-6 years ago, because I wasn't still yet convinced of the meaning of Eris. We became aware of Eris in like 2005 or something like that, very recently.
Such big cycles that it's so hard to.
Yeah, and everybody has Eris and Aries. Anyone who's alive has Eris and Aries. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll just test it. And actually, what's really interesting is when Eris is in relationship to significant placements in the chart. Otherwise, I look at the chart, I see what Eris is doing, and then I take it off. When there's no specific, I'm not going to add that to a client who's not directly impacted by this. Why invent a story that's not really going to influence them? Unless there's like currently now we've got Chiron meeting up with Eris, which is a really interesting sort of timing thing for 500 plus year cycle that's re-establishing between those two. And here it does really tell us something. There's a feeling of not having been seen, not having been valued, and that's playing into his insecurities, right? But and also his way of pointing out social hypocrisy, which is also Eris, and that he does directly. And then, you look at other things, like there's so many asteroids now. There's thousands, and now Astro Gold keeps sending emails every time they add on more asteroids. It's like, what am I supposed to do with all these things? You might as well draw a tarot card, because all it is very symbolic.
Well, that's really good information. Just the fact that unless it's a An exact conjunction. There's no sense of being really
Yeah.
even
And
touching it.
people are also using fixed stars wrong. So what happens is people take a placement, something in the chart, and they think I'll apply it the same way I would for a planetary thing. A fixed star has a very specific orb. Each star has an orb of application that is unique to the star. Like lately, everybody's been saying, if I pull up um, the transits we see. So everybody's been talking, well, other astrologers have been speaking about Uranus having been on Algol for such a long time. And it's not been, it's now, just now approaching the Algol, because Algol has an orb, it's like 26 degrees and 12 minutes of Taurus, and there's a 2 degree, 10 minutes or 11-minute orb of influence. You can't go beyond that, and it's only by conjunction. So then you start hearing people talk about opposite Algol, square Algol. No, it's a fixed star. You don't do that. It's conjunction, and that's it, full stop. And it has a specific orb. You can't give it a 5-degree orb or a 10-degree orb like you might in a natal chart. We have to understand, where's the tradition coming from? What is the original intention of it, and how am I applying that? Is it aligning with what it really should be? And this is why I prefer people to really go very, very basic and not go too far into other things. The naming of different things is done also not by astrologers, but by astronomers or even random people. There's a lot of wonderful stories of children who are just like hobby enthusiasts who have located different asteroids, and they have them named after them or named after their favorite game character or whatever. And it's like, okay, so is that significant now? Are we supposed to take that on board and say
Well,
this?
nothing's random though.
Well, but again, where do you draw the
That
line
I agree.
is the question, right? So yes, there's something in the zeitgeist for sure, but we will go completely insane if we try and pack it all into a natal reading. Most of my readings are an hour or 90 minutes. That's the majority of my readings. And I never finish a reading in 90 minutes. We never finish. We always have more to say. And that's just using the basics that you're seeing here. And there's always more to say, because we always have to keep in mind what the client wants to know, not what we want to tell them, but what do they want to know. So we have to be able to, dig deeper into the things that we can say, well, for centuries now, this has been what Jupiter means. So I can pretty much rely on that. I'm not quite sure about the others, but the ones that I've tested, Chiron, I never take that out of a natal reading. I've tried it now for 15 years, and it has proven itself again and again and again, and it shows something real to the individual and how they've experienced themselves. So I definitely use that, but the others I can take or leave. All right, Elsa said goodbye, and David Cochran was the name. Yeah, Cochrane. Is it with an E on the end? It might be Cochrane, Cochrane, but you'll find him. Just click, go with David Cochrane Astrology. It's pretty scientific stuff. It's not astrology, like it's not as much astrology as maybe a beginner might want. It's a lot of scientific statistics and all this kind of thing, because he's really trying to scientifically prove what we think is happening in astrology. For example, like one of the reasons that already years ago that I just kind of ignore a Mercury retrograde unless it's really deeply affecting a person, including myself, is that there's no statistical evidence that Mercury retrograde causes anything of any real struggle. There's no more planes that don't take off, or people missing their trains, or emails that go lost. Like, well, what explains it beyond Mercury retrograde? If it's all about Mercury retrograde, it drives me crazy, actually. It's one of my big bugaboos, but everybody's obsessed with it. Everybody will say, oh, it's Mercury retrograde. And even now, and people who don't know astrology say, oh, it must be Mercury retrograde. It's like, and then it just diminishes astrology. It puts it into this whole kind of magical thinking box. And that's such a frustration for a tool that can actually really help people. It diminishes that. And we're doing it to ourselves as astrologers, and that's what's even more unfortunate.
Can I ask a quick question about that?
Sure, yeah. And then I'm going to have to go because it's
Okay. Sorry. Because it also annoys me when people say it to me all the time. But then recently, all my internet's gone and my phone and my thing and all this stuff, and I was like, maybe they're right. But would it be affect people more if they have a really strong Mercury in their chart?
Maybe, but is it only because it's Mercury, or is it because Mercury is aspecting their Mercury, or what is the reason?
Right.
So you see,
Right.
there's so many factors, so many things, and you know, is it impossible to have an internet problem without Mercury being retrograde? Like, you know, it's all these things. Really, we need to really just reflect on the things that we believe. It's very important. Like, are we causing ourselves to believe something by association, which is not what astrology is about. It's really about trying to understand how is this impacting this moment through what the chart is telling me, not what I think it's telling me, not what I want it to be telling me, not what I hope is. You know, there's an astrologer, bless her, sweet woman who I happen to know, and the universe is kind and loving, kind and loving. Yeah, life is fabulous. Life is so great. People only pay me 225 euros to hear how wonderful things are because life is so freaking marvelous. And it's like, no, life is life. It just comes at you. And sometimes you just have to grapple with it. And this is that kind of Mercury retrograde sort of magical thinking. Like if something's gone wrong, it's not my fault. Mercury is retrograde. I wasn't mindless. I didn't forget to pay my energy bills or whatever. Like, what's going on, you know? That's again, it's like Santa Claus. It's the same kind of problem of not taking responsibility. All right, very last question, Cher.
Chair, no, I was just going to comment on Mercury. My flight was cancelled on Saturday, Monday flight. I think Mercury is retrograde from Monday, and I've got a transit of Mercury as well in retrograde going over my Mercury in Aries. So there we are. Boom,
yeah.
boom.
So here's the thing, it's a correlation is not causation, and that's the thing to remember. It's again, that happened and that was your experience, but it's not, we can't attribute that to Mercury. You see, that's the thing. We want to say, well, there's a reason behind this. The mind is always looking for the cause and the reason for this. We also have to recognize how many moving parts there are. If Mercury were the cause of flights being delayed or things going missing, it would happen to everyone without exception in the world, around the world. People who didn't know astrology would be missing flights constantly. There was research done in New York State, I think it was, some American state. There was research done where researchers actually took the times of Mercury retrograde, and they asked for the flight data from, I can't remember if it was JFK, but anyway, let's say a major enough airport. And there was no correlation to Mercury retrograde through thousands of flights, through thousands of data. Nothing correlating. And so we have to really understand that there's a thing that we can use as a tool to help people, or there's something that we can be flippant about and diminish that. You see, it's kind of like, I went through this with yoga. I went through this with Ayurveda. It's like everybody kind of goes with the easy things, the low-hanging fruit, and yoga is all about physical exercise, nothing else. Ayurveda is about what tea you drink, you know, or whatever, you know, it's just like, oh, Christ. And so the same thing is happening with astrology since it's been on the internet. It just diminishes, it's like the lowest common denominator starts to influence things. Before internet, not internet, but let's say before social media, nobody was talking about Mercury retrograde. Nobody. It was like, Mercury's retrograde. Oh, right. Okay. So let's take note of that. Right. Interesting. But it wasn't like Mercury's retrograde and everybody talking about it and making whole videos about it. And it's like, no, never was like that. Even if you look at YouTube from 15 years ago, you're not going to see it. All of it is coming through Instagram and the you know, all this clickbait and a need to be seen and a need for viewerships and a need for likes and monetization of everything. And so that vulgarization of the notions of astrology is doing us harm if we want to use this as a tool that can really help people. Because it's easy to discredit when you say, oh, Mercury retrograde made that happen. And it's easily proven that it didn't, you see? And so if you want to be taken seriously, I would really be careful how you describe certain things. Be careful how Like really try and understand, how do I describe the resonance between what's going on in the sky and going on in me, and to avoid causation as you know, the notion that a planet is causing something by the fact that it's here or there or in this direction or not, you see?
I think it was Heathrow's closure that caused the cancellation. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't worry about
right. And God knows that in 50 years, Heathrow's never closed once, right? So,
No, exactly.
I
I've
mean,
never had a cancellation before.
yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, we just have to be, my way of looking at this as a sort of slightly therapeutic astrologer is what you could call a counseling astrologer, is to treat the topic with the respect that you would treat your client with. And the tool is the thing that you're trying to help your client with. So if you're frivolous about your tool, you're not going to be able to reach into the soul of your client, let's say, and really help them. Yeah, that's maybe where I'll leave it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So
Susan, that aligns with the concept that, you know, if you're going to fix something, you get a bigger hammer.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's the sign of our, it's Kali Yuga, it's a sign of our times. Somebody said it'll end in a week. So again, these are entirely hard to prove, hard to disprove. So we don't know. Kali Yuga can go on for thousands more years, or it can be slowly changing, but we won't be alive to see it either way. So we don't have to really
Worry
bother
about it.
too much about it, right?
Yeah.
So all right, now my dog is desperately asking me to go out.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, I will send you the links later today to the videos. They'll be put up in the course and put in the WhatsApp group, and then the transcript will be ready when it's ready, and you can have a look through that.
Thank
All right.
you.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, and so just to be clear, there's no specific homework this week because it is our last week. I want to focus on wrapping up everything. If you still want to offer me homework based on previous assignments, go ahead and do that. If you haven't finished one, or you want to redo one and make sure you're just testing what you think is going on there, you can do that this week, okay? And for those who did submit for the last couple of days, I'll get back to you tomorrow. All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
See you in a week.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.